The Christmas tree is out, there's a chill in the air. I've got a Christmas jumper on, that means only one thing. It is time for the annual Christmas Chronik Spartan stealth game review. And this year, we will be looking at Mission Impossible Operation Surma. Now, the story of Mission Impossible Operation Surma goes back 22 years ago, when on the 2nd of December 2003, Mission Impossible Operation Surma was released on the PlayStation 2, GameCube and Xbox. Now, at the time, I had a PlayStation 2, and a few years earlier, I had loved playing Mission Impossible on the PlayStation 1, a video game I've covered in one of my previous annual Christmas stealth game reviews. However, at this point in my life, something wasn't calling out to me about Mission Impossible Operation Surma. I kept on spotting it on the shelves, but for some reason I never pulled the trigger. I didn't have as much disposable income at the time, and games like Grand Theft Auto and Burnout were calling out to me stronger. However, every single time I walked past it, it caught my eye, and something told me I was missing out on something. Fast forward 21 years, and on December 2024, I finally started playing Mission Impossible Operation Surma on my Retroid Pocket 5. Now, I got a decent amount of the way through Operation Surma and was really enjoying it, but certain huge life events happened back in December 2024, which made me put it down. 12 months later, and at the beginning of December 2025, I decided it was time to pick it back up again. I've always enjoyed the Mission Impossible franchise, the movies, the TV shows, and the games, but sometimes in my life, I've enjoyed it more than others. And this year just happens to be one of those years where I've been loving Mission Impossible. The latest movie was fantastic, and I've gone through binging all the movies again and the TV show. And so it just felt right to finish Mission Impossible Operation Surma. And in the first week of this December, I finally completed it and wondered why I'd held off for so long. Now, Operation Surma is not a perfect game, much like most of the games I talk about on these annual Christmas stealth reviews. But what it is a massively fun game, and a game that sparks nostalgia. Even though I only recently completed it, it just reminds me so much of those early 2000s stealth games. Now, when you start off the game, it starts off in that classic Mission Impossible style, where Ethan Hunt receives a message with a mission, whether he would like to accept it or not, and the mission will self-destruct in 5 seconds. It does a really great job of setting you up for the game and getting you excited for what's ahead. And what I really love to see is that straight away you can see it has some of the iconic characters like Ethan Hunt and Luther. Now, as with everything Mission Impossible other than the movies, Ethan Hunt doesn't look like Tom Cruise. It would be awesome, but that's just not something we're ever going to get. However, Luther looks exactly like Ving Rhames, and Ving Rhames even voiced the character himself, which just brings an amazing level of authenticity to the game. Straight away, as soon as you start playing, it feels exactly like a stealth game of this generation would feel, and it gives you all those stealthy vibes. And this is one of my favorite things about Mission Impossible Operation Surma. It's the mechanics. It's made so well and makes stealth gameplay feel so much fun. The movement, shooting, and stealth aspects of the character control are really well done. They're not groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination, but they do what they need to do really well. And it gives you all those kinds of feels and the confidence that you need to try and pull off some awesome stealth moves. But these are kind of standards, things you would expect from any half-decent stealth game. Where Mission Impossible Operation Surma really starts to stand out is in its more unique gameplay mechanics, which really makes it feel like you are genuinely in the Mission Impossible universe. First of all, there's lots of hacking in the game. You hack terminals, you hack entries, and you even have a tool which enables you to start hacking cameras. The game has a lot of cameras like in Metal Gear Solid, but instead of just sneaking past them, you can use your tool, which works like a gun, and you can target them to shoot them to disable them. This makes it really nice approaching a difficult situation which otherwise would have no way of you being able to sneak past, but being able to take out the cameras and make the whole environment a lot easier to sneak around it. Furthermore, you have a tiny small copter where you can scope out the environment, go around corners, see what's going on, fly through air ducts to access new areas, and at the same time you can also use a taser, which enables you to take out enemies to make the environment so much more safer to move around in. All of these little aspects are the nice little things that give you that kind of control over the environment without putting you at risk. For me, this is the best thing about stealth games. It's not just sneaking around as a character, but it's also having the tools to be able to make the environment safer, or to be able to explore the environment without putting any risk at your character. And Mission Impossible Operation Surma does a great job of introducing these tools and these mechanics, but also making them really easy and fun to use. Now, the first thing everybody thinks of when anyone mentions Mission Impossible is that laser scene with Ethan Hunt, where he's dangling from the roof of the CIA Langley base. And now, previous Mission Impossible games have tried to incorporate that in some way, but I think Mission Impossible Operation Surma does it the best. You could almost argue it overdoes it because there's a lot of levels where there's lasers and you're hanging from a rope. But I think every level feels unique, and each time you need to approach it slightly different than the last one. I really don't mind cheesiness in my stealth games, and as a matter of fact, I kind of like it. So to see this almost tongue-in-cheek, obvious use of such a classic Mission Impossible moment, I thought was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it. At the end of the day, that's why I play these games. I want to feel like Ethan Hunt. I want to feel like the Ethan Hunt I saw in the movies, and this does a great job of it. Another fantastic mechanic is more towards the end of the game, and that's some skydiving levels. The scenes where Ethan Hunt has to jump out of an airplane with no chute, steal a chute from another person, and save someone at the same time, and finishing it all off by diving into another airplane as well. Now, a lot of games would have used a cutscene for this, but Mission Impossible Operation Surma puts you right in on the action. You have to guide Ethan Hunt through the skies, changing his body direction and angles to go faster, to be able to follow the target, to stay on target. And it's actually quite tricky, but incredibly fun. And the whole sequence just makes me think of a more action version of Pilot Wings. And genuinely, I just think it would make for a great game in and of itself. It's a fantastic scene for building up that tension towards the end of the game. And it came as a bit of a surprise as well, but it just goes to show how much they tried with Mission Impossible Operation Surma, not just to put out a basic, simple stealth game, which they could have easily done, but to try to think out of the box and put some really exciting Mission Impossible focus scenes in there, and I think they did a great job. Now, as I said at the beginning, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect game by all means. There are some issues and some things I would have loved to have seen change. Somewhere in the middle of the game, it did feel a little bit dull at times, and I did find myself going through the action just to be able to get towards the end and complete it. After completing the game, I was thinking to myself, what made it feel that way? Because it's not as if the mechanics had changed, it's not as if the action had changed or anything. It was just as good a game in the middle as it was at the beginning or the end, but there was something that was lacking. And I think for me, some of the level design ended up feeling a little bit repeated in the middle. It didn't feel as unique as it could have done. One of my favourite things that I look forward to in stealth games, and the original Mission Impossible on the PlayStation 1 did quite well, is snow levels and also party levels where you're at like an embassy or something and you're just walking around in your suit and tie, being undercover but without any threats going on in that moment. That's something we've seen in previous games, that's something we see in the movies, but unfortunately it was missing from Mission Impossible Operation Surma. And I think for me that's why too many of the levels felt too similar, and that's why at the halfway point things did feel a little bit boring at times. Throwing in one of those embassy missions or even just a level covered in snow so it looked a bit different to other ones would have made a complete difference. Furthermore, there wasn't enough face masks in Mission Impossible Operation Surma. And I said earlier before, one of the first things that people think of when you say Mission Impossible is that laser scene in Langley, but also it's the face masks as well. It's Ethan Hunt tearing off that mask, those classic moments. Now, it did exist in the game about 3/4 of the way through, and it was at that point I thought to myself, actually, yeah, we haven't seen this at all in the game. And it was used in that moment quite well. There was about maybe 5 minutes where I was walking around with somebody else's mask on, somebody else's face on, and it was really good, and it just made me think this game needed more of that. I would have loved to have seen more of those face mask moments, and I do think maybe they could have taken out a few of the laser sequences and replaced them with face mask moments where you could walk around, and I guess I could say maybe the game was a little bit too focused on the action and not enough on those moments where you're walking around disguised. Nevertheless, Mission Impossible Operation Surma is a fantastic game that really scratched that itch for me when it comes to nostalgic stealth games, but it was lovely because it was a new experience for me as well. At the halfway point, I wasn't really sure if it was going to be a classic game that I was going to look back fondly on, but once I'd finished it, it definitely warranted its place in the Chronik Spartan annual Christmas stealth game reviews. If you want to check out previous episodes of Christmas stealth game reviews, then check out this video right here. And from me and the whole family, Merry Christmas.